Remember what we were doing last time? Well, we've been working on this all week. Working on the idea of flight. First we did buoyancy, and then we did floating, and finally we arrived at the point where we talked about the airplane. Now the airplane itself has changed our whole way of living. The early settlers, when they wanted to take a trip like this, we'll say from New York to the Great Lakes area, to Texas, up to Washington, well, they had to contemplate 6 months or maybe a year. We can do it, I'd say, in about 6 hours. The big reason is that we have the airplane. But the airplane itself cannot do it by itself. It needs some sort of control. This is a straight trip. How about this trip? The trip itself is straight, but there still is a turn involved. And then another turn involved in this leg of the journey. The airplane is not a vehicle that just flies. The airplane flies, but in order to fly successfully, it must be able to take off, maneuver up or down, right or left, and land successfully. What goes the trip if you can't get back to the ground? Now, our plane glider is a form of a plane. It's also a form of a kite, I guess. It doesn't have the airfoil that we've talked about. It just catches air the way a kite would catch the air. We might call it a sailplane. Our glider, and we'll make one right here, is a very simple form of air travel. I don't think you would consider it a satisfactory method of air travel, especially if you were going to be the passenger to ride in or on this glider. The reason it's not satisfactory is that we can't control it. It just flies and goes wherever it wants to go. You can aim it in a general direction, but if we pointed it towards California and came down, we'll say in Oregon or Washington or Arizona, we might not consider this satisfactory. Simple glider, no control. I can throw it toward you and not be able to tell if it would go to the right or left or what. Just fly a glider. Now, we really don't know exactly where the glider will land. But if we want to be able to control our airplane, we can put onto it control surfaces. Surfaces which will move and do the job that we want them to do. One of the big jobs of an airplane is getting it to go up or down with control. Of course, getting an airplane to go down just by itself is no problem. But I'm saying with control. And the item that controls the up or down movement is this movable control surface right here on the tail section. Now this control section is the elevator section. And if we study what happens to this section when air comes across it, when we have the movable section up, air coming across will strike this control section and physically push it down. Really just rebound and push the plane down. If the control section, the elevators, if the elevators are down, air coming underneath the tail section will strike the elevator, and push the plane in this position. So the tail can be made to go up or down depending upon the position of the elevator. Now, when the tail goes up or down, the plane follows the action. Let's see if we can duplicate this action using a fan and our elevator controls. I'm going to set the elevators up. Elevators are set up. What should happen with the elevators set up? Well, air coming across, hitting the elevator, should knock the plane into that position so that it would climb. Let's see if our plane will climb. Get the fan going, and we'll use this as the source of air power. Naturally, the plane would have the propeller pulling the plane through the air, but in this case, we'll have the air moving. Now, get the plane steady. I'll just leave it alone. It climbs. Let's see that again. Let it get it nice and steady. She's climbing again. Well, let's see if it's actually the elevators that's causing this motion. I'm going to get the elevators to point down. Air should come underneath, and the plane, air hitting the elevators, should cause the elevators to flip upwards. Let's leave the plane alone, and there we see that motion. It's limited by a little iron bar that I have there, so the plane just doesn't fall over. Elevators causing the plane to go down, or elevators causing the plane to go up. Up motion and down motion. The elevators may be considered the movable surface of the plane, which in this case causes the plane to go up or down. Easy to remember. Just think of what an elevator does. It goes up or down. Now, having our plane go up and down has a definite advantage. We get off the ground, and we can bring it back to the ground easily. Now, that's fine if you want to travel up someplace, down. Okay? Up into the air and then straight down. Suppose you want to turn. Then we have a different problem. The idea of turning is controlled by another movable surface. The movable surface, again, located on the tail section. And this movable section, or movable surface, here we see it, is called the rudder. You notice the way that rudder can turn this way or this way. Now, following the action of the rudder, if air would come along and hit this surface, the plane would be pushed this way. Or if it were turned the other way, air coming along hitting this surface would push the plane that way. So that we see that we can have our plane turn right or left according to the direction of the rudder. Now we'll put our plane right here on a little stand. I again have little wires hooked here so that the plane can't turn around in a full circle. And again, we'll use our fan as a source of air. Let's find out if our plane will respond to the rudder. Air coming straight in. I'm going to set the rudder this way. This way. So the air coming along should hit the rudder and cause the plane to move like that. Let's see if the plane will turn that way because of the position of the rudder. There we go. Let it leave it go, and it's turning. Air hitting that rudder, swinging the plane around. Now let's see if we can get the opposite reaction by turning the rudder in the opposite direction. We have the rudder turned, and the plane swings back. Start it off again here. Plane swings back. So we see the rudder. The rudder itself determines in which direction the plane will turn. Now, the rudder might almost be compared to an elevator. The elevator would make the plane turn up or turn down. Well, in flying in this direction, still flying through air, the rudder would cause the plane to turn this way or turn the opposite way. So here we find the rudder as the movable control area, causing the plane to turn right or left. Now, in turning a plane, we get a very special problem. The plane actually depends upon the air to hold it up. Lift, remember the kite effect, airfoil, lift. Now, if the plane would turn this way, the plane would slip because there is very little of the plane to push against the air. Well, here we find the plane resting on the air, going fine, turning this way, slipping towards you. Now, the way we overcome this slippage is to get the plane to bank, turn at this angle, so that there's a lot of surface pushing against the air. So that not only will the plane turn this way, but it will turn this way, so it cannot slip. The movable control surfaces that prevent the plane from slipping are located on the front wing. One of the reasons we have them on the front wing, I think, is that the back wings are pretty well loaded up with control surfaces. And here we see the control surfaces that control the slipping motion. And these are the ailerons. Now we're looking at the rear here, and we can see that they will operate separately. One will go up while the other goes down. The other goes up while the other one goes down. Front view, you can see the exact same idea. Plane coming right at you. This surface up, this surface down. Air hitting this surface, knocking it down. Air hitting this surface, knocking it this way. So the plane would bank this way. Changing the control surfaces, air coming across the wing will hit this surface, pushing it down, while this air coming across this wing will hit this surface, pushing it up. So the plane will bank to the right or to the left, depending upon the position of the ailerons. Ailerons, rudder, elevators. Let's see if the ailerons will cause a little model to bank. Give ourselves enough room, turn on the fan. Let's see what we hope will happen. Air should hit this aileron and knock it down while the other aileron is being pushed up. Plane should bank in this direction. Get our fan, leave the plane alone, and we find the plane has banked. Try it again. There we find banking of the plane. Let's reverse our aileron positions. One up, one down, and we find the plane now banks the other way. So here we find the movable control surfaces working on the plane, causing the plane to bank, causing the plane to turn, causing the plane to go up or down. Now, controlling the control surfaces has to be simple. I don't know how simple it's really going to appear here, but I have tried to put on this little model all the control surfaces and how they are worked. The rudder itself back here is controlled by foot pedals, and when these foot pedals are moved, cables pull the rudder. See that rudder flipping back and forth? Cables pull the rudder one way or the other. Foot pedals do this. Now the elevators are controlled by something called a stick. The stick is located right here, and if we look at the elevators, we see that when we pull the stick back, the elevator goes up. We push the stick forward, the elevator goes down. Push the stick forward, plane dives, pull it back, and the plane climbs forward and back, controlled by the stick. Now also hooked on the stick in a side-to-side motion, we find the ailerons. And the ailerons work in opposite directions. They either go up on one side or down on the other, or down and up. So the pilot, by moving the stick side to side, can control the ailerons. Pulling the stick back and forth can control the elevators, or pushing on the floor pedals can control the rudder. These are the three primary control areas of the airplane. Now, we don't mean to say that there are no other important parts of the airplane, but we do say these are the control areas. Now, we started off with a glider. We have some more gliders. I took time to make them in advance. This is something that you're going to work at yourself, I hope. Make your gliders and put on the control areas. How about putting on elevators? Elevators might just be this type of surface. Notice, we can point them up, or if we want, we could point them down, bend them the other way. Why don't you try them both ways? So we can see if the elevators on the glider will work. Or take a glider and insert into it an extra piece of paper. I'll just cut off a little piece of paper here. Insert that right into your glider, staple it into position, and put a rudder on it. Bend the rudder right or bend the rudder left and find out how the plane responds. Now in this case, you may have to put a few extra little staples or a paper clip up front to balance the weight of the rudder. But you can put a rudder on your plane, glider, or even the ailerons. One down and one up. Throw your glider in each case and see if your gliders respond to elevators, ailerons, and rudder. You can try this yourself. I hope you will. Now the plane itself has lots of other parts, very interesting parts, We know that the fuselage holds the cargo and the people. And we know that the propellers tend to pull the plane forward, at least in some planes. A plane like this, the propellers do more than that. The propellers are used to lift the plane off the ground, at which time the elevators take over and turn the plane and let it fly forward. When the plane wishes to land, the elevators are put in the direction where the plane points upward, and then the propellers are slowed down slightly, and the plane will settle back and land. So the propellers can do different things on the plane. Besides make it just go forward, they can make it go up and even allow it to come back. And a new plane that's being tested right now, this is a very interesting one, a vertical takeoff plane where the propellers are pointing up. In this case, would cause the plane to be lifted off the ground. The people all sit in the right direction. But we can move these propellers front. After the plane has been lifted, move frontwards, and the plane can be pulled forward. When it wants to land, propellers face upwards again, and the plane will lower itself down. So we see there are lots of control surfaces on a plane, lots of them. And we see that planes have many things to do. Now, if we go to a review and try to put everything together, we're going to find out certain special things. The first thing that we learned about our planes is that many parts of an airplane are needed to help it fly. And also, the elevators, rudder, and ailerons help in controlling the flight of a plane. Now, in controlling the flight of a plane, we have to look back at this idea. Look at me, and here's the picture of the plane that I'm going to talk about. This is a plane which is quite historic. The first plane ever to fly, the Wright brothers plane. See if you can find a picture of the Wright brothers plane, and see if you can find the control surfaces on this plane. If you do a little reading, you'll find that the control surfaces were slightly different from the control surfaces that we know today. So see if you can figure out control surfaces on the early Wright brothers planes. And I'd also like you to do a little experimenting on gliders. See if you can add control surfaces to your own gliders. And the next time we get together, we're going to continue with planes. This time, we're going to go into another field, rockets and jets. See you again soon. Bye.